and welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio's Facebook Daily Live Updates. Hey, it's wonderful to see you, and how are you doing? Hope you're having a wonderful day so far. It's a pleasant weather out there, isn't it? I mean, it's not very sunny, it's not very bright, a little bit cool and crisp in the morning, as I found it during my works. Well, quickly, let's take a look at the weather for rest of the Wednesday, the 22nd. Well, there's some showers predicted today. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the maximum is 18, so that's why you can feel that. Normally we go up to about 22. So the shower or two, rainfall probably from 0 to 1 millimeters, and the chance of rain, which I've been talking about, is about 15% chance. So there's a fair chance that there might be some rain. So cloudy in the morning as it is now, a medium 40% chance of showers, most likely in the late morning and afternoon. Light winds becoming southeasterly, 15 to 20 knots, and early afternoon, and then becoming light in the late afternoon. Fire danger is low to moderate, but fire is fire, so never ever take that for granted. Always take the necessary precautions that are needed, because you never know what could happen. So always be careful. Sun protection, we are in Queensland, so from 10:10 till about 1:20 today. The UV rating at 4. So, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm going to talk to you about coronavirus. You know, there's been so much happening out there. People are very uncertain as to what's happening. You know, there are functions that are being cancelled or put on hold. And then there are people who are trying to sneak in through the borders and all that's happening. And by now, you know, we had thought that we had everything sort of under control, but I think we are far from it. It's not under control by any means. But when you look at Queensland, the good part is no new cases overnight. No new cases overnight, and as we know, that the active cases at this point in time under Queensland is only two active cases. So, but let's look at the figures. So confirmed cases so far have been 1,072, and out of that, recovery was the 1061 and death 6. In Australia, the confirmed numbers are 12,428. That's 359 more than what we reported last time. So, and the recovery is 8,541, deaths 126. That is 3 more than was reported last time. Worldwide, yesterday we crossed the 14 million mark I'm talking about. So now it is 14.8 million. 0.8 means we are getting pretty close to the 15 million mark. Recovery so far worldwide has been 8.34 million with 612,000 deaths. So that's a lot of people who have passed. So here in Queensland, you know, this stats which was updated late yesterday night, 0 new cases in the last 24 hours, 1,072 total cases, as we have said. The tests that have been done so far have been 466,479. So that's a lot of tests that have been done. And total lives lost, as reported before, 6. So when you look at all these figures, where did all this come from, and how did this all happen here in Queensland I'm talking about? So in Queensland, the cases that have happened, all the ones that were acquired overseas was 335. So the largest number of cases in Queensland were acquired overseas. They were not even here. They were not community, you know, spread. So this drives home that point that we were always talking about, that testing should have been done at the point of entry or at the point of departure in any country. There should have been testing there, and you know, a quick test. And if you test positive, you stay put. You go in quarantine there, and then you don't even board applied. So, you know, when you look at these numbers, 335 acquired overseas, and they've all come to Queensland, then they had to be looked after, and the amount of money that the government has spent even in quarantine, as we know, 5-star hotels, some of the hotels we know very close to us are, you know, serving as quarantine stations, 5-star hotels, and they get all this treatment. So 335 of the total cases in Queensland were acquired overseas. Locally acquired with contact known. So the ones that were locally acquired, but government or health authorities knew where they got the infection from and how did it come about, were 67. So there were 67 cases in which the sources were known, but they were acquired locally. Of course, when you get 335 coming from overseas, there might be others who might have slipped through the system as well, who is spread that. So, locally acquired were 67, and locally acquired, but with no contact. No one knew where or how someone got it, like they didn't know who the contact was and how they contracted that, was 17. So there are 17 of those ones in that cases, and interstate is 5. So these are some of the figures that when you look at it, this is how things have panned out. And, there's been a lot of talks about, within the community and things like that. So when you look at this, 335, the majority of the, the large number of cases in Queensland were cases of the, coronavirus acquired overseas. So as a community, we've done well. But, the prevention-wise, it's all in hindsight. It's always easy to say, oh, maybe we could have done better. But as we know that, it's easier to say and then to do. But when you look at all this, it is good to see that there is not a lot of communal things which are happening in Queensland, but further down the track where we look at something that's happening at the borders and all the things that people are trying to do and how they're trying to sneak into Queensland. So that might, of course, change things a little bit as things happen. And of course, the other big news that we are all talking about is the JobKeeper. Well, that's a welcome news, but what form will it take and how many people will it help? So, of course, there is no doubt at all that without JobKeeper, the situation would have been very, very grim. Of course, us included, there's many companies who could not have employed people or kept people in employment if it wasn't for JobKeeper. And it is wonderful news and a very welcome news that it will be extended in a slightly different format and in a manner. But again, I think credit needs to be given where it is due, that the government has done very well to implement that and keep the economy afloat and keep many people livelihood in place as well. Of course, when we talk about system, any system for that matter, there are always flaws and loopholes, especially when laws are made very, very quickly in response to what's happening very quickly, which has never happened, which you couldn't plan for. So under those circumstances, the things that the government has done has been pretty good, I must say. That's my point of view. So when you look at the points that they're trying to look at is that, there should be incentive for people to be employed and there should be incentive for people to go to work. Sometimes the balance is not right and they say, okay, if I go to work, I get this much, but if I just go and, just go on pension, I will get this much. So why should I even go to work? So there's no incentive to go or, be inclined or, actively seek that work. So these are some of the things that we really, really need to look at. But these are very, very challenging times, the ones that we live in. And there's many things that have to be taken into account when we look at our leaders and what they're doing and the pressure that they may be under as well, the advice that they're getting. Of course, all the policy that are made are based on the policy advisors, and sometimes they have to seek all this information very quickly, plan and implement these rules very, very quickly as well. But right now, let's hear from our Prime Minister.
When the COVID-19 pandemic was really starting to hit, our government moved. And we moved quickly. We worked together with other states and territories to coordinate one of the most significant health responses anywhere in the world. In addition, as a federal government, we moved to provide an economic lifeline to people impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic with the biggest economic support package this country has ever seen. It was called JobKeeper, And together with JobSeeker, it has supported over 5 million Australians, specifically 3.5 million on JobKeeper, in 960,000 businesses, 1.6 million Australians being supported on JobSeeker. Payments of $1,500 a fortnight for those on the JobKeeper program and $1,100 including the COVID-19 supplement for those on JobSeeker. And of course, when you're on JobSeeker, you can access other support and welfare payments. This gave Australians time, not just the income support they needed. It meant that in a time of tremendous uncertainty, businesses didn't have to decide about whether they had to shut down or let people go. And we avoided those types of outcomes for people. Businesses stayed together with their employees. And many months later to now, I know, because the businesses have told me all around the country, that JobKeeper saved their business, saved their job, and gave them hope at a time when there was little to be found. Now, we still have several months to go on that first phase of the JobKeeper program. It runs for 6 months. It was one of the longest programs put in place at its time in the world by providing that income support through the employers. And we've just taken decisions over the last few weeks to ensure that this program will continue to flow for those businesses that continue to be most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and what has now become the COVID-19 recession. Businesses that have had a 30% fall in their turnover, they will continue to get that support, and so will their employees. There will be 2 levels of support though this time, one at $1,200 for employees working more than 20 hours, and at $750 per fortnight for those working less than 20 hours. At the end of December, that will fall to $1,650. These measures could never be permanent. They were significant for now and while we're dealing with the worst impacts of this COVID-19 pandemic. And so we will have to get to the place in the future where we will no longer need these supports. But for now, they're very necessary, and we understand that. We've been careful about this. We haven't rushed to these decisions. We've carefully considered how to deliver this support in the best possible way. We know that this is costing taxpayers a very significant amount. And so we've been careful to ensure it's going to those who need it most, in those parts of the country that are most impacted. And so that support will be there. Now on JobSeeker, the payment will be coming down by $300 on the COVID supplement, but you will be able to work and earn $300 in that fortnight without it impacting on any of your JobSeeker payments. Now, of course, we know there's not a lot of work out there at the moment, but when you can access that work, we don't want you to be penalised by having your benefits withdrawn when you're taking up that opportunity. So that's why we've made those changes. We're also reintroducing mutual obligation requirements. It's not okay to be knocking back jobs while you're receiving taxpayer-funded benefits like this. And so those mutual obligation arrangements will be coming back in. We also want people who are on the JobSeeker payments to be reconnecting with their employment service providers. Now that's ideally to get people back into another job, or it's to get people into training programs. Last week I announced that we would have Job Trainer, a new program. $1 billion spent between the Commonwealth Government and the states and territories that we spent between now and the end of June next year. So if you can't get yourself into a job, then you do have the opportunity to undergo further training which might help you upskill or reskill for a different type of job. The COVID-19 pandemic means that many people are having to change courses, change directions and seek out opportunities in new industries. I know this is terribly difficult and disruptive, but we want to make that as easy for you as possible. And that's why we've provided this additional training support. And for apprentices, we've put $1.5 billion in to ensure that 180,000 apprentices will be able to remain on the tools and on the job over the course of the 6 months till the end of March. So as a government, we're turning up. We were there when it first happened. We're still there now and will be there in the future. I hope you understand and appreciate that we are determined to continue to be there, making decisions to support you with the many decisions you're trying to make.
And rightfully said there, I think when you look at the decisions that are being made and the points that he mentioned, and also about the training program. So, not only have the JobKeeper been put in place, also there have been incentives put in place to upskill people, to train people, to make sure that, they have the required skills to upskill and to become a little bit more productive as well. At this point in time, I'd like to say a very good morning to Manjumala Patnaik from India, tuning in all the day and always joining in. Good morning to you. I hope you're having a wonderful day out there. So, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, moving on with the show, when we look at all the things that we were talking about and about how people are trying to sneak into Queensland, let's take a look at what the police have to deal with sometimes. It's a very quick sort of someone trying to sneak into our beautiful Queensland.
Oh, well, hello, buddy.
Hello.
Stay where you are, mate. Get you to have a seat, hey? Why are you trying to sneak across, mate?
Not a very good outcome for the would-be. So anyway, these are the things that people try and do. Now, looking at America, so what's happened there is more than 100 NFL. When the news first came to my table, I said, what? 100 AFL? Then, oh no, it's not AFL, it's NFL. So almost 100 NFL players have tested positive to COVID-19 as the league gears up for return. The union also noted that all 32 teams have submitted infectious disease emergency response plan with 8 approved and 24 under review. This is what's happening in US. The NFLPA's heat map of home markets in which public coronavirus cases are rising the fastest continues to show Florida and Arizona as the most vulnerable, with Miami Dolphins ranked first by a wide margin. Arizona, which includes the Tempe and the Glendale region, and Phoenix is second, followed closely by Jacksonville and Tampa Bay in the fourth. So that's what's happening right there in America. But here in Queensland, more than 200 people who are meant to be isolating under strict coronavirus quarantine laws are missing, nowhere to be seen. More than 200 people who were meant to be isolating at home under strict coronavirus law are missing. So since April, police have found 100 and found 400 people that were not supposed to be where they were, but they have been put back in place. 185 people gave officials the wrong addresses, and 25 others went at the address that they gave to the police. 210 people remain unaccounted for and face hefty fines if they are caught. So since mid-April, more than 2,000 compliance checks have been conducted by COVID-19 task force, with officers uncovering almost 400 people that were not supposed to be where they were. Of those flouting the rules, 185 gave health officials false contact details, including addresses that were alleged to have that they were supposed to be isolating at. Another 25 people gave authorities the correct information, but when police visited them, they were nowhere to be found. So this is what's happening. So Queensland, once again, the snapshot is that confirmed cases so far is 1,072, deaths 6, and tests conducted 461,932, 2 active cases, no new case reported overnight. So that's where we are. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. As we know, things are happening well on the federal level with the JobKeeper and everything that's been put in place to keep the economy going, keep people's livelihood at stake. And in Queensland, our Premier's been busy opening schools.
Investing in our children's future is fundamental. Just as we're investing in health and looking after the health of Queenslanders, I'm absolutely determined to invest in our children's future when it comes to making sure that they have the school education that they need. Minister Grace and I had the opportunity to open the new Baringa Primary School, and today we met with some of the students, Year 6s, who will be the first Year 7s at this brand new high school that we are building. We'll grow to a high school of around 2,000 students. I can also announce today the official name of the new high school, and it might not come as any surprise to people, but it's going to be called the Baringa State Secondary College. This investment is needed for the area. It's hundreds of jobs. This high school alone is $127 million, 382 jobs and 14 apprentices. This is clearly demonstrated in this area here, where we are seeing 10 families a week moving into this area. And I've just also come from the Lee Street Special School. A big shout out to all the students there. They were very excited to see that they're also getting an expansion to their special school at Caboolture there.
This is an amazing investment in the future of our children, in the future of these growing communities. These are some of the fastest growing communities in Queensland, and we are building the infrastructure to meet that demand. And I can see the smile on the faces of the students that are looking forward to coming here next year.
And that is a welcome news, when we are investing in this kind of infrastructure and, of course, looking after the special needs. As we know, there was another school which was open on the north side as well. So, this is welcome news, the investment that goes into this kind of infrastructure, building schools, hospitals and other things, it's always a very, very good move. I know there have been lots of talks about the social housings, the aged care facilities that, is always being talked about as well. So, our children are the future, and the investment into the education is always a good investment. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a very quick commercial break.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globnetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 Sandgate Road, Bundall, Queensland. GlobeNet Reality. Real estate is our world.
And it definitely is there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to news in brief. And let's look at what's happening around the world, around the globe. So number one, UK government failed to determine whether Russia meddled with the Brexit.
The committee found it astonishing that no one in government had sought beforehand to protect the referendum from such attempts or investigated afterwards what attempts to influence it there may have been. The UK government, should have recognised the threat back in 2014 in relation to the Scottish referendum, but it didn't.
Successive governments have welcomed Russian oligarchs and their money with open arms. And there is a lot of Russians with very close links to Putin who are now very well integrated into both UK business, political and social scene.
So as per that report, they should have picked it up as far back as 2014. Now, the next news is Australian soldiers with a Confederate flag. Australian special soldiers hold Afghan people captive after a 2012 raid, and the two Confederate flags to be signaled to the US black hoppiter. So here's the first footage that's been brought to us, even though this happened way back. A very rare footage that has come to hand. We'll leave that news there. As we know, everyone's talking about JobKeeper and Job Seeker, and we have heard from our Prime Minister about the extension and what format it would be extended in. Right now, let's see a news report on the same.
Scalable, tempered and temporary. Prime Minister Scott Morrison reinforced his mantra today as he unveiled JobKeeper and Job Seeker 2.0. 3 months into the $70 billion support programs, the government had no choice but to extend them. Responding to a Treasury review, it's extended both payments for months, but there are some significant changes. From October, the JobKeeper payment currently paid to 3.5 million workers of $1,500 per fortnight will be cut to $1,200 for the 3 months to December. In January, it will be cut to $1,000 and run until March. For casuals and part-timers who are working less than 20 hours pre-COVID, their support will be slashed to $750 per fortnight. This is to reduce the number of people getting more in support than they ordinarily would have earned. Businesses will have to reapply for JobKeeper in October and then again in January, proving they still need it. For those on Job Seeker, that payment's being slashed to $800 a fortnight. It's still above Newstart. For workers just hanging on, the step-down payments mean there are no guarantees after March. This report from finance correspondent Philip Lasker.
And now, let's take a very quick look at the finance as we're quickly running out of time.
On to finance now, and the local share market had its biggest rise for more than a month. Investors reacted well to the extension of fiscal support, as well as the news of a big new fiscal package in Europe. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, the share market surged by 2.6% with big gains by the hot stocks like Afterpay and Zip, Viva Leisure, Mesoblast, not to mention CSL and the banks. Partly because our market had been lagging a bit lately, but also because of two fiscal spending announcements. The Australian extension of the JobKeeper program and also the EU finally agreed on a new €750 billion fiscal package. After 5 days of sometimes bitter negotiations, an exhausted EU President, Charles Michel, tweeted deal at 1:30 this afternoon, our time, which was 5:30 a.m. in Brussels. The euro fell because of the old buy on the rumour, sell on the fact wheeze that markets often go in for, but the expectation is that European markets will have a run tonight, and Asian markets were bid up this afternoon in anticipation. In New York, the Nasdaq rose 2.5% because Amazon jumped 8%.
So that's the update for the global market. Right now, going overseas, let's go to India and take a look at the headlines of what's happening there.
Our top story tonight. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Agriculture met on Tuesday to discuss the impact of locust attack in the country. The panel also took stock of the steps taken to deal with the problem. More details in this report.
The committee, headed by Lok Sabha MP PC Gaddi Gowda, in its 23rd meeting understood the facts from Agriculture Ministry's Secretary Sanjay Agrawal and other senior officials. A total of 10 members attended the meeting. The committee also inquired about the steps taken by the government towards handling the locust menace. The meeting, the first since the COVID-19 outbreak in March, specifically looked into the impact locust attacks have had on the farming sector and the need for a national policy to deal with it in the future. In rural areas, locust swarms are a threat to the kharif crop. The scale of the problem can be gauged from the fact that as of last week, the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare had carried out locust control operations in over 350,000 hectares across at least 9 states, including the most affected ones of Rajasthan, Gujarat and Haryana.
On to the COVID-19 situation in the country. Over 37,000 cases reported on Monday pushed the country's total COVID-19 infections to over 11,55,000. Tuesday marks the 6th consecutive day of a rise of over 30,000 cases in the country. However, the total number of recovered patients has crossed over 7 lakh. The number of COVID-19 deaths per million population in India continues to be among the lowest in the world.
COVID-19 infections in India rose to over 11,55,000 on Tuesday after 37,148 new cases were reported on Monday. 587 deaths were reported in the last 24 hours, taking the total to 28,084 casualties. Over 7,24,000 patients have recovered from the disease, while more than 4 lakh cases remain active. The difference between active COVID patients and recovered persons has further expanded by 3,22,000. The recovery rate stands at 62.72%, while the case fatality ratio is 2.43%. According to the ICMR, a cumulative total of over 1,43 lakh samples have been tested so far, with 3,33,000 samples tested in the last 24 hours. With a focus on test, track and treat, the country has ramped up sample testing. In April, 28,662 samples were being tested on an average per day, which increased to 94,663 in May, 1,66,313 in June and 2,77,736 as on 20th July. According to the Health Ministry,
those graphs saw the increase in the numbers there as well. But of course, when they look at the stats and the analysis of the recoveries and the distance, then it of course paints a slightly different picture. But the fact is, those numbers are alarming on a daily basis. So, the control measures need to be once again put in place. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Australian Indian Radio's daily Facebook Live. And don't forget that today at 11 a.m. on our radio, you listen to a very special Samarpan Meditations discourse by Swamiji, and that's at 11 a.m. and that's on the radio station, at which you can go to our website through TuneIn, through Streamer, through many different platforms that the radio is available on. Make sure that you tune in at 11 for that wonderful discourse by Swamiji. And don't forget that 6:30 p.m. Migration Ka Safar with Suman Dua, and of course Suhana Safar with Nidhi tonight as well. All the shows and all the presenters, some excellent shows on the radio, and there's so many different ways that you can listen to the radio on there as well. So ladies and gentlemen, with that I'd need to say goodbye. But before I do that, I'd quickly run through the upcoming events for the week. Now, if you have any community organization or any community event or function that you'd like to have covered on here, we will be glad to incorporate that into the program. And if you have any notices that you'd like to get out to people, we will gladly do that as well. And any message that you would like to pass on, we will pass on through here. And if there's any topic that you'd like to come and sit down, discuss with us, we'll most happily do that for you as well, because this is your station and your channel. So I would like to hear from you and see what you'd like like to see on the program and the way it is progressing. But I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your support so far, and the comments and the likes, etc., that we are getting. So it is wonderful to see that. So under the current circumstances where people are not out and about, there are so many things that are happening in the community which is not regular things. If it wasn't for this, we would all have been very busy jumping from one function to another, trying to fit as many things as we can. But right now, under these conditions, many functions which have been planned are still being planned because, people are reluctant to at least go ahead full steam with those things. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say the goodbye, and it's been wonderful having your company until tomorrow. But don't forget that at 11 we have that very special presentation by Samarpan, but that's on our radio. So www.australianindian.net.au, or you can listen via TuneIn, via streamer, via radio online, radio.co, many different platforms, many different ways. That is your choice. You listen to it in whichever way you want. So until tomorrow, goodbye.